Okay, welcome back and hello to our audience on Zoom. Our first featured reader is Leanne Boschman. Leanne lives on traditional and unceded lands of the Cowichan tribes and Malahat Nation. Her poetry has been long listed for the CBC Poetry Prize, ReLit Award. Her poem has been awarded the 2022 Delta Literary Arts Society Poetry Contest and Pulp Literature 2023 Kingfisher Poetry Contest. She is the author of 2 collections of poetry. Her chapbook, Household Dangers, was published by JackPine Press in fall 2025. Boschman earned her PhD in Languages, Cultures, and Literacies at SFU and works in the SOAR Program on the Malahat First Nation. The poems in Household Dangers aim to unsettle our sense of familiarity in the domestic space, to probe the hazards, relational, environmental, as well as to trace moments of transcendence. Let's welcome to the mic, Leanne Boschman.
Okay, I think that's good. How does that sound? All right out there? Okay, thank you, Sharon. And thanks, Zoe, for opening up this wonderful space for us every week. And I appreciate Kieran inviting me to come and read some poems from my chapbook. And the open mic readers, of course. That's the whole planet Earth poetry thing, right? Is that you can have this amazing 30-minute poetic journey when you come here. It's so great. And there were so many new people to the mic tonight. So I felt like we should actually have given them all a hand for reading for the first time and look forward to hearing them again. I do want to start tonight by just acknowledging the tragic events in Tumbler Ridge this week. And because it's been a really hard week in our province, in our country, and unimaginably so there in Tumbler Ridge. I have a 12-year-old granddaughter, and I wrote this poem for her when she was 4. And so I want to honor the love and the light that those young humans brought into this world. So I want to start with permission. At the end of the day, when I reach into my purse for keys, fingers probe a soft, bunched roll. My granddaughter's folded socks nestled there after our visit to a berry farm. In late spring sunlight, sky stirred with thrush song. We plied the leafy rose, loosened red fruit, and I did not say no when she could not wait to take her basket to the tap at the field's edge, ate strawberries seasoned with soil. When she wanted to roll her toes in the dirt, I agreed, then collected her quickly abandoned footwear. And at the farm store, I said yes, when she asked for a pink glazed donut, something not allowed in her house, a foolish treat, a taste of some long craved permission, a place long parched within me was suddenly watered with possibility. So now it's not difficult to imagine this bundle could be anything: apricot, peony bud, a small beloved bird. Okay, so it's great to have a chance to read from my chapbook, which is published by JackPine Press in Saskatoon. Saskatchewan's my home province, so it's really special to me to have this chapbook. I've long admired JackPine's work, and they really like to push the boundary of what a book is even. But I would say that mine is more traditional format. But it does have within it 9 evocative photographs by a talented Victoria photographer, Johanna Vanderpol. And in this book, I do explore, all kinds of aspects of the meaning of the objects in our life. I think about Gaston Bachelard and his Poetics of Space, where he talks about how memories of the outside world will never have the same tonality as those of home. And by recalling these memories, we add to our store of dreams. We are not real historians, but always near poets. So it's the poetic aspects of those things and the stories. I've for long been someone who likes to poke around in antique shops and flea markets. I used to love to go with my mother because she would see things that she had at home when she was growing up, and it would spark stories. And so I think that these things, now I look at these things as having their own stories. So, and as well, the art objects in our lives. So the first poem I'm going to read, the first poem in the chapbook, I wrote in response to an exhibit of photographs, and it's called Postcards from the Shadows. I had been asked with a group of poets to respond to a photographic exhibition in Vancouver, and I found it a little hard at first, and then what I started to tune into were the shadows. So this is Postcards from the Shadows. 1, grammar lessons. A, use shadow as a verb. Rain fell every day that month, fell slantwise, riverward, earth tilting. Soon we learned to paraphrase its mesmeric dialect, shedding our night clothes, how to shadow our way towards one another. B, use shadow as an adjective. The thin whisper above Frida Kahlo's lips is so shadow. Consider also the following items: a foghorn's moan before midnight, river ash, night-scented stalk, black eggs of the honey creeper. 2, eyeshadow. Try this, you don't need much, my older sister would say when she instructed me in the arts of deception. On any given day, we would slip out of the house, our eyelids the hue of ripe damson plums, the Mediterranean at Crete, or verdant young tea leaves. Did I say my favorite was railway tie gray? Did I mention I never had an older sister? 3, shadow bird. In China's southwestern Xinjiang, the Bore's nightjar has not been seen since 1929. A specimen that once could be held in the hand. It is perfectly possible that this elusive bird has evolved as a species that can be identified in the wild only by other Bore's nightjars. Still, you may find yourself imagining its song. 4, shadow colors. Shadow pink, less lustrous than shell pink. More naked than earthworms after an early morning shower, echoes like wet zinnia petals on the same morning. Shadow brown, more scuffed than a leather valise, is found knee-deep in bracken, can be described as shaly and be shed like a vagabond's coat. Shadow blue is a distant cousin of mirthless blue. Prolonged exposure to this hue may cause distrust of certain expressions, such as win-win, a happy occasion. Shadow orange, brighter than topaz mined in ancient times, cannot be hurried, like waking up in that bed in Mexico where your parents, gone these many years, once slept. 5, Shadowland. This tour is not for the casual adventurer or weekend cave explorer. You will rappel down an underground waterfall so deep you may lose track of centuries, be startled by what feels like the cold flutter of a leathery wing. Realize it's your own heartbeat. So among the photographs in the chapbook, there are those that were taken in a flea market up in Duncan called Lulu's. And Lulu's is a wonderful place that's not really curated or organized or even clean necessarily. But just saying, it's a great place to poke around. It's a lot of fun. And Johanna took pictures there of mannequins and all kinds of old kitchen objects and so on. But she also took some photographs in an artist studio. And so like I said, some of the poems do explore art objects and art and its place in our lives. And this one is called Encaustic. What visual medium would you work in? A question you toss out on a weekend when we wander through neighborhood studios. If this weaving of words were to be exchanged for some other kind of making, perhaps the scissoring and jostle of cuttings into collage, I consider two washes of water and pigment that merge on vellum, stranding tiny particles of paint, or the rough heft and wedging of clay, air pockets sealed, fine grit pried out. Pausing before a light-infused lake, I say, I am most drawn to this, the burning in of encaustic, its transparent glazes that cure to a glass-like sheen, melting layers that cannot be pried apart, beeswax and resin that hold both images and breath in the spaces between, like the way two people can remain for years just out of touch, the way a water lily stem seems to waver beneath a frozen pond, and a woman, a wife, wants to say, see my spiral leaves, my radial petals that cup daylight, despite small fish nibbling, ooze and sludge of years, see me here. Okay. I can show you, which I know you can't really see at the back, that the chapbook is sewn, has a sewn binding, and I really wanted that to be so because I had to be sewn, and that because I have taken up sewing pretty obsessively over the last few years, but I didn't have the right industrial machine to sew the binding, and I looked for quite a while for someone to help me with it, and then found someone really close that I didn't know in my own village, and she has a sewing business, and it's called Sewing by Stella. She has a 1940s mannequin in her front window that she dresses for the different seasons. The mannequin's name is Stella. I'm just saying, it was quite wonderful to meet her. So I felt like the chapbook over time became, a collaboration in a lot of fun ways. So I'm going to read the poem about sewing, and it's called Back in Sewing Class. Some of us haven't sewn since home ec class decades ago. Now we 8 women find ourselves in a utilitarian space, not unlike those high school classrooms. Long, sturdy tables, ironing boards support the heavy, gasping irons. Drawers house well-used pinking shears, the tailor's chalk, seam rippers waiting like old friends to welcome us back. The teacher informs us that she has made all of her own garments, chosen the fabrics and thread, embroidered fanciful birds on her jean jacket. She laughingly asks us to get ready for a dose of reality, as there is no vanity sizing in the patterns we're about to sew. As we measure, we will know more intimately our own dimensions, how time has shifted breasts, waists, and hips. We will even measure our thighs. The grid of a lifetime has been laid down for many of us, but here instructions are unfolded and we begin making choices. Style of sleeve, pant length, whether or not to include trims and frills, scissors hiss through the crinkled crepe paper, pins attach pieces to fabric, and soon machines are humming. Checking and fitting at intervals, we don partly constructed apparel. Here is a woman in a blouse with only the neckline stitched, one wearing a dress with sleeves pinned on. At one point, I try on my pants with the side seams unsewn. They are comical flower-printed chaps flapping open. We begin to collect stray pieces about one another's lives. A nurse who has worked in Somalia, Afghanistan, a corrections officer, a hospital administrator, marriages ended, choices faced about whether to go on solo or look again. Repairs have been made, a skin cancer diagnosis received and survived. Our teacher, a widow who raised her 4 children, then a grandchild, tells us she sews for up to 6 hours a day. When asked if she listens to the radio or audio books, crinkles her eyes and says, absolutely not, that she relishes silence, finds it to be as ravishing as a symphony. We talk about what has been patched up, how we long to create something from the dull heap of busy hours, how we find the received patterns now fraying, and we laugh about how much we enjoy gathering here in what was long ago just a girls' class. In late afternoon light, I look up to see the curve of 7 backs, the faces bent towards diligent diving needles. When class is over, measuring tapes are put back in the drawers, lint blown off the feed dogs, so they are ready to catch fabric, scissors ready to slice once more, pins to hold unfinished parts together, these tools ready to construct, to unmake and remake, to take the measure of a woman. I think I will just finish with this poem, the last poem, which is called Most of Your Stuff is Worthless. And the title is a quotation from a blog written by Siobhan Crowdeville, who is an estate planning lawyer. And I feel like that poets should always take their titles from such unlikely places, if possible, when possible. So, most of your stuff is worthless. Hutch, armoire, credenza, our offspring do not want these heavy relics, belongings that have laid such claim on us. When asked by grandchildren about my youthful chores, I recount how weekly with lemon oil I anointed each hulking fixture, my parents' old bedroom suite in my room when they upgraded. Later, the nicked desks, faded dining room tables of our student days, ferreted away from secondhand furniture shops, those mausoleums of what were once teeming woodlands. After her parents died, my friend from Belgium shipped at great cost imposing cabinets, bed frames, tapestries, how they filled her farmhouse on Vancouver Island, her loyalty to them even after her childhood, where everything was ancient grudges, incursions, stone, coldness. Grandson, what will you have to pay for our possessions? You, who only 5 years ago took up small space, the translucent membrane of your skin, small buds of your fingers lengthening. You were born in a city that was once coastal rainforest, where our affection filled the room when you arrived, flourished, before we had given you even the weight of a name.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Our next featured reader is Theresa Muñoz. Theresa is a Canadian poet and academic living in Edinburgh, Scotland. She has a PhD in Scottish literature from the University of Glasgow, where she wrote the first PhD on the work of Tom Leonard. Her first collection of poetry, Settle, was shortlisted for the Malahat First Poetry Prize. She has been awarded the Muriel Sparks Centenary Award, Robert Louis Stevenson Fellowship, Creative Scotland Award, and shortlisted for the CBC Prize and the Sky Arts Royal Society of Literature Writers Award. She has produced several literary initiatives in the UK, including the Newcastle Poetry Festival and the James Barry Poetry Prize. Her second poetry collection, Archivum, is a work of encounter, an electric exploration of the spaces between self and artifact, self and city, self and history. Let's welcome to the mic, Theresa.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for that wonderful introduction, and it's lovely to be here tonight. I'm actually in BC. I'm currently the Right residence at the University of British Columbia at Green College, so it's really lovely to be here, and I'm from Vancouver originally, so it's lovely to be home. I'm really grateful. So I spent about 6 years writing Archivum, and a lot of it was based in archives. So I spent about 6 years looking at jam recipes and the archive of Muriel Spark. I've specialized in author archives, publishing archives and things. Do many of you are familiar with Scotland or have been to Scotland? Oh, good. It'll also be a long 15 minutes. So that's great. Yeah, so a lot of the poems are based in Scotland. That's where I wrote the book. So I'm just going to start with special collections. Inside the reading room, it's me with letters pink and crinkly, thin as gift wrap. For months, I scrunch my face at each one like a crossword. The sedative quality of immersion means no getting up, no water, nothing, until shadows flood the carpet. It's a skill, isn't it? Reading the letters of others. No openings for conversations. No spine, the author's disapproving face. Only this, picking half-truths amongst the slanted lines, shuffling papers into a stack, both light and heavy. Be better, I tell myself. Be worthy of this journey. We had a cat, and we used to say to her, be better, don't be yourself, be better. That's where I got that line. I spent a lot of time in the Muriel Spark archive, and Muriel Spark was a Scottish author whose most famous work was probably The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. And actually, there's someone here in the audience who was almost in the movie from Edinburgh. So The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie was the movie that won the Oscar. It starred Maggie Smith, the late Maggie Smith, whose estate I had to write to have permission for a couple of poems in here. And the movie is essentially about Muriel Spark's childhood set of friends who went to James Gillespie School for Girls in Edinburgh. So I looked a lot at the school photos of Muriel and her friends and the actual original Brodie set. So this is what this poem's about. James Gillespie School for Girls. This poem is about that clarifying pang when your tub of school photos is your face at a distance from your face, and what it means, if anything at all. Since memory works its cross-purposed way, our brain's northern garlic cloves form our temporal lobe, and without that synaptic alert, I wouldn't know my own face in the elevator, rising to archives again, white-gloved as a cartoon mouse. I rummage for the acetate square with curled edges, varnished as an ice pond midwinter. This famous photo, 38 girls from the school on the links, Muriel Spark's chubby heart face, skimming Pal Francis, a fringe in a scissor-cut path, and the Brodie set who inspired that book, humble as flowers at the foot of a wall. They're all dead now, including the teacher, Miss K, in her blue cloche hat. And some part in me rises and flips, recalling snow prints on the plain green, lining up to line up more. In these memories, we find our own face easily, like a pin on a map. Like a bang when you see your face again, like a bang is my half-formed thought on the hot bus swaying home. I push my key into the lock, drop my bag on the floor, because at some point we sailed through the door to adulthood, and since we never learned to love ourselves, we love ourselves trying to learn. I'm just going to read one more poem from that series I wrote, and it was about Muriel Spark's friend Frances Niven, who was inspiration for Jenny in The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, who was the pretty one, the one who made off with the art teacher. But they had a really beautiful friendship, and there was a box of all the childhood little stories they wrote together and the little origami figures. It was just a lovely thing for me to see and somewhat be a part of. This is called Dear Frances. My girlhood friend, I'd like to see you again. Maybe the silhouette of your ruffled hockey skirt on the cow-slipped grassy knolls. I'd like to see the sea cave where we buried the slips of paper, the poem we wrote together laid in the sandy bowl. I'd like to see you glittering as a Christmas ornament in Rome, descending the marble balustrades. Bless you, old friend, for never saying how hard it was when it was. What makes sense now are glorified celebrations of fragility, the day's preciousness reduced to small vapors, saffron light touching the fences. Except this, my own silhouette gaining contours at dusk, when the sky tips light on the sloped blossom path, and dripping willow trees rise to a salty pink sky, and there's light, there's rain, and you know you've arrived, minus one person. I'm just going to read a couple of poems about Edinburgh, where we live, and it's a wonderful city. It's full of ghosts and history and pints and chips and all the good things. One thing I'm going to read is a poem about the Balmoral clock, which is the big clock. If you've come into Edinburgh in the station, there's a big clock there, and it's 5 minutes fast or early, 5 minutes fast. It's for people who don't miss the train, to catch the train. And I looked at the original blueprints, and the clock tower actually goes way down below the station, under the trains to basically the bottom of the earth, the middle there. And the funny thing about this clock is that even though it's 5 minutes fast every single day of the year, on Hogmanay, which is Scotland's biggest celebration, the clockmaster, climbs up all the way to the top and puts it to the right time so you can celebrate New Year at the right time. And then when it's over, he puts it back again, 5 minutes fast. It's fascinating. I commute a lot, so I'm always late, and I'm always looking at the clock. Balmoral clock. I'm late as usual, so I trace the clock like a holy thing. Study of absolute lines of light and gold. Time's arms do not hold us, but point us away, across the gilded bridges, the galleried West End, over Parliament with protesters surrounding the upturned boat, down to Leith's tumbling coves, and I'm hurrying, late as usual. I scan the mustache curves of the turrets, the sandstone baronial facade, which leads to the depthless levels of Waverley, and all the things you want to forget. The soft cuffs on their shirt, the welcome slump of their coat on the chair. My eyes trace the clock's spiky crown and that window of opportunity that everyone knows, those extra 3 minutes it gifts. We all love time. Enough time for lots of things, a kiss on the steps, a quick text, time to regret the thing you didn't say, and enough time to board and look backwards as you go on. I'm just going to read one more poem from Edinburgh, and it's about the Canongate Kirkyard, and that's apparently where Dickens saw the name Ebenezer Scroggie, which is where A Christmas Carol was essentially born. And it's funny though, because Ebenezer Scroggie's grave has apparently been moved down to England, so we no longer have it there. But that really inspired me, because you can see actually pictures of where it was buried. Anyway, I decided to write. I don't write Christmas poems, but I tried to write one, and forgive the Taylor Swift reference in here. So. Ghost. Tell me how to ghost someone, how to slide into shadows. In the sloped kirkyard, I circle plots of historical interest, crumbled stone, overlong grass, Ebenezer Scroggie's remains, once buried under fog and starlight. Here is the spot Dickens conjured sugar plums, eyes glinting like money bags. 3 nocturnal visits like unhappy ex-boyfriends. Tell me about ghosting someone. Tell me about ghosts, slim, steamy, low tide energy, how to be present but mute, to be the one not responding to texts, instead doom scrolls their phone at all hours. How to have no insides like a wave, to amble in the sea like a jellyfish, to hover with omnipotent knowledge like a camera. Tell me how to be a confident ghost, to whistle past like a bullet train, to be so honest you're transparent as a dumpling skin, a ghost made of small grains that fall through your palm, a ghost of no words but down bad thoughts. Tell me how to be a seasonal ghost, shimmering red and green above the tinseled tree, to exist in the realm of what will be, to live in peace. I'm just going to finish with 2 very short poems. I was writing poems about interracial couples, and that is because in Canada, I think, especially in British Columbia, they're about 20%, and in the UK, they're less than 4%. So I was researching historical interracial couples and multiracial families in Scotland. And there's not many. But one of the things I found was Eliza Jr., who was the daughter of a former slave owner and a slave, and was born in Demerara, now Guyana, and moved to Scotland. And there was no mention of her mother after they moved. She moved with her father and her brother. So that really stayed with me. So I decided I wrote this poem about what we know of Eliza Jr. The last words of Eliza Jr. So I'm dying, but I'm not unhappy. I'm thinking of you in this rose bedroom when yesterday's sun warms the doors. Time passes in glimpses and echoes of curlews. I think in ship knots, tangled memories. You were not to leave Sugarland, Demerara with us. I kissed the door in my pinafore. Never coming back, declared William, your son and my brother. With father, we sailed to Scotland's Black Isle, the land of pines and mink whales, rocks and water. Never mind the sun playing keepy-uppies at the stained glass the day I was baptized. A private ceremony, the priest said. He smiled, but I understood. For school, father picked dresses for me in colors of sugar, brown when picked, white when processed, and blue at dawn. I smoothed the lace, even in cloth we let light in. When strangers stared, it was your soft skin they spied. So much you have missed in your granite bed, but I've held you in the tents and kettles of my handwriting, the strict teachers' college in London's slums, then back here at Rosemarkey's dressmakers. I sewed them all in your image, your hair in the threads of faint silver. This is just my last poem. It's the only poem. I have only a couple of poems written about Canada, and this is one of them. And it was when, everyone's favorite multiracial couple, Meghan and Harry. And it's when they moved to Vancouver Island. It caused such a stir in the UK, so I thought that's hilarious. So I'm gonna write about that. Meghan and Harry moved to Vancouver Island. I know Horth Hill and its network of paths, rock shelves blank-faced like a person hard to trust. Framed by pines, the press snapped them visibly relaxed, a digital snow day of West Coast vibes and Gore-Tex silhouettes. It's early, misty, and our socks bear a Fair Isle pattern. We go up Horth Hill, stratums of soil, rock, and ice packed as cake layers. We move dear quiet, thoughts polished to jade, musing why are they here, to vent, spill tea, shed drama, storm mushroom trails and uphill spirals, to be lost or to get lost, to climb above cityscapes, to reach the near summit and see the after before the before, islands simmering in blue fathoms of unhappiness or hope. And it's this sneak preview that makes us still reach out, maybe kiss, maybe look out. If hikers saw us from a distance, they'd wonder, were we rooted to the earth? Thoughts of that kind. So now we know this famous couple. They came, grew armor, turned into trees, and stayed.